On June 7, 1862, a gambler named William Mumford was hanged from a flagpole jutting out of a government building in New Orleans. His crime? Tearing down an American flag. That building was the United States Mint in New Orleans, and by the time Mumford died on its rooftop, that mint had already been seized by a state government, handed to the Confederacy, used to strike its own coins, and left to sit half empty for over a decade. This is the story of how one of America's most productive mints rose out of a financial crisis, got hijacked by a war, and eventually became a jazz museum. Chapter 1. A Mint Built Out of Crisis. To understand why this mint existed at all, you have to go back to the 1830s when the United States had a coin problem. President Andrew Jackson had just killed the second Bank of the United States. Foreign coins were still circulating everywhere because the country just didn't make enough of its own. And then in 1837, the whole economy crashed in a financial panic. The federal government's fix was to open 3 new branch mints all at once in 1835. One in North Carolina, one in Georgia, and one in New Orleans. New Orleans wasn't picked because it had gold in the ground. It was picked because it was already one of the busiest ports in the entire country, sitting at the mouth of the mighty Mississippi, pulling in foreign trade and Mexican silver and gold from every direction. If you wanted to turn raw bullion into official U.S. currency close to where that bullion actually arrived, New Orleans was the obvious spot. The building itself was designed by Mr. William Strickland, one of the Earth's top architects, and he did it in the same Greek revival style he used on the other mints. Grand columns, a commanding entrance. This was meant to look like a temple to American money. There was just one problem. New Orleans is basically a swamp. Strickland's design didn't account for it, and the building started sinking and cracking almost immediately. Engineers spent the next 2 decades trying to patch it, and in the 1850s, a young military engineer named Beauregard, who would go on to become a Confederate general and, ironically, help set off the war that would get this very mint seized. Chapter 2. The Old Mint Mark is born. On May 7, 1838, the New Orleans Mint struck its first coins, 30 dimes, and stamped them with a small letter O, short for Orleans. That mark is still exactly what collectors look for today. Any pre-1861 or 1879 to 1909 U.S. coin with an O on it came from this exact building. Over its first run from 1838 to 1861, the mint produced more than 427 million coins. Gold dollars, quarter eagles, half eagles, eagles, double eagles, silver from half dimes up to silver dollars. Altogether, over $307 million in face value passed through these presses, which was an enormous sum for the era. And here's a detail most people don't know. New Orleans coins had a reputation for being kind of rough. Collectors and historians have long noted that old mint coins from this period often came with a dull luster and soft, poorly struck centers, likely a byproduct of that swampy, humid building and less experienced staff compared to Philadelphia, which is exactly why a well-struck, sharp Nolans coin from this era is worth a real premium today. The flaws are part of what makes the good ones special. Chapter 3. Seized by Secession. Then came 1861. Louisiana seceded from the Union on January 26th. At that exact moment, the Mint's vault held nearly $500,000 in gold and silver coin, and that money and the building itself now belonged to the state of Louisiana, not the U.S. government. By March, Louisiana had joined the Confederacy, and the Confederate government took direct control of the mint. For about a month, Confederate officials actually kept the presses running, using the existing U.S. dies, but with one twist. They designed their own reverse die for the half dollar. And this is where the story gets genuinely rare. Only 4 of these Confederate-struck half dollars are confirmed to exist today. One of them reportedly belonged to Jefferson Davis himself, the president of the Confederacy. If you ever see one of these coins come up at auction, you're looking at one of the scarcest coins in American history. A coin struck by a government that only existed for 4 years. The Confederate mint operation didn't last long. They ran out of bullion to strike by the end of April, and the remaining staff they left by the end of May. The building sat mostly empty, then got used to house Confederate troops. In 1862, Admiral David Farragut's Union fleet fought its way up the mighty Miss and recaptured New Orleans. And that's when William Mumford, the gambler from our cold open, he tore the American flag down from the mint's roof in defiance. Farragut wasn't in charge of the city yet when it happened. General Benjamin Butler, who took over occupation of New Orleans shortly after, well, he had Mumford arrested, tried, and he was hanged from a flagstaff on the mint's own roof that June. It made national headlines and became one of the most talked about incidents of the entire war. Chapter 4. A Second Life, then a Quiet Death. After the war, the mint didn't reopen for coining right away. It sat dormant for over a decade, before reopening as an assay office in 1876, basically just testing metal purity, not making coins. It wasn't until 1879, after Congress passed the Bland-Allison Act, requiring the Treasury to buy and coin huge amounts of silver, that New Orleans got new equipment and started striking coins again. Most famously, Morgan silver dollars. New Orleans Morgan dollars from 1879 to 1904 are some of the most collected coins in the entire Morgan series today. This second era also has a detail worth pausing on. By the end of this period, roughly 44 women worked at the mint as coin adjusters, counters, press operators, hot, windowless rooms, kept dark on purpose to protect the sensitive scales from drafts. It was some of the more physically demanding factory work available to women in the South at the time. But the Mint's second act didn't last either. Silver dollar production stopped in 1904. In 1909, the Treasury simply declined to fund the facility's operations anymore. And by 1911, well, it was formally shut down, and its machinery was shipped off to Philadelphia. Machinery that, remarkably, has never been located since. Chapter 5. From Mint to Prison to Jazz Museum? What happened to the building after it's almost stranger than its time as a mint? It became a federal prison from 1932 to 1943, then Coast Guard storage, then, during the Cold War, a fallout shelter. Louisiana took ownership in 1965, and after a major reno, the old mint reopened in 1981. Not as a mint, but as a branch of the Louisiana State Museum. Today it houses the New Orleans Jazz Museum, filled with instruments that once belonged to the city's legendary jazz musicians. Hurricane Katrina badly damaged the building in 2005, and it took over 2 years of repairs before it reopened in 2007. It still stands today, one of only 2 former U.S. mints in the country that now houses an art gallery. So the next time you come across a coin with a small O stamped on it, remember, that letter isn't just a mint mark. It's a building that survived a swamp, a war, a hanging, a prison sentence, and a hurricane, and somehow ended up as a jazz museum. If you want more stories like this, coins with actual history behind them, not just values, subscribe and let me know in the comments which coin or mint you want covered next. Thank you so much.